So hello guys, welcome to new video of politics.
63 years. And excuse me if you don't mind. That's a record we won't be able to match, darling. I'm sorry. Just not going to work out that way. We'll do well, but we're not going to do that well.
And here we go. Yeah. Maybe. Anybody else coming? Hello. Little tap.
Before we go any further, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because this is one story you definitely do not want to miss. Somewhere along the way, a marriage that once looked like it belonged on the cover of a glossy magazine slowly started to feel more like a reality show that kept recording even after everyone assumed the cameras had already stopped. And now, things have reached a point where late-night comedians are no longer making jokes from a distance, but are instead treating the entire situation like a full case study in public awkwardness that just keeps unfolding.
Morning when I greeted the day facing yet another Twitter vomit storm and a call to fire me from our First Lady, Melania Trump, saying I should be fired because of a joke I made, again, 5 nights ago. It was a pretend roast. I said, our First Lady Melania is here. Look at her, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow, which obviously was a joke.
Forget politics for a moment, because this feels less like a normal headline and more like someone accidentally dropped behind-the-scenes footage from one of the most mysterious marriages in the world. And the effect is impossible to ignore. Jimmy Kimmel did not just lift the curtain a little, he pulled it back so far it feels like the whole setup might need to be rebuilt. And suddenly every handshake, every glance, and every perfectly timed smile starts to look less natural and more like part of a carefully managed script. Now the real question is not even about what exactly was revealed, but how something like this managed to sit right in front of everyone for so long without truly being noticed.
All right, okay. Yeah, there you go. You know what? Considering the week I've had with the first couple, I'm just going to say that is a completely normal way to interact for two people who are very much in love. Maybe that's why his hands are all bruised from Melania swatting them away.
When Jimmy Kimmel steps into this kind of territory, it stops feeling like simple comedy and starts to feel like someone finally decided to connect dots that have been flashing in plain sight for years. Because when a couple begins to look more like reluctant co-workers than actual partners, people naturally start paying attention, whether they meant to or not. And once that attention starts building, it becomes almost impossible to ignore.
White House Correspondents' Dinner, if you don't know, it used to be an annual event before Trump showed up. But every year they'd have a comedian roast the room. The president, the vice president, members of the press, everybody got roasted. I did it once. I hosted it. It was a lot of fun. But this year they said, no comedian. We're bringing in a mentalist instead. So on Thursday, 3 days before the event, in order to keep that cherished tradition alive, I did my own version of the Correspondents' Dinner on my show. I put on a tuxedo. We pretended we had an audience of luminaries. We used old footage of the Trumps, of Pete Hegseth, J.D. Vance, Kid Rock, Vanilla Ice.
The strange part is not that attention is focused on them, because that spotlight has always been there. But now it feels like that same spotlight is revealing more than it ever managed to hide. Every carefully planned appearance somehow ends up creating even more questions instead of answering anything, which only adds to the growing sense that there is more happening beneath the surface than what is being presented.
And I'm happy you decided to stay, Mr. President. And don't worry, if we bruise your ego, it'll only make your hands look less disgusting. Now, the president didn't want me to tell any jokes about him tonight, but he also didn't want to pay me $130,000 to shut up. So here we are. Sorry, Mushroom. Ice, baby, ice. By the way, in the unfortunate event that our president has a medical emergency tonight, do we have a doctor in the house?
There is also the matter of timing, because every time a new headline involving Donald Trump appears, the reactions around Melania somehow become part of the story, whether she says anything or not. And in many cases, that silence ends up speaking louder than words ever could. It creates this unusual dynamic where one half of the relationship generates constant attention, while the other maintains a distance that feels almost intentional, as if the entire connection operates on two completely different wavelengths that only occasionally overlap during public appearances. Kimmel's commentary works so well here because it highlights just how unusual it is for a couple in such a visible position to sometimes appear so disconnected. That brief effort to present unity becomes part of the humor because it turns every shared moment into something people replay, analyze, and quietly question. The situation becomes even more complex when larger controversies surround Trump, because those moments tend to pull everything connected to him into the spotlight, including his marriage. Suddenly, their dynamic is being viewed through the lens of everything else happening around him, which adds even more layers to the way people interpret what they see.
It was a very light roast joke about the fact that he's almost 80 and she's younger than I am. It was not, by any stretch of the definition, a call to assassination, and they know that. I've been very vocal for many years speaking out against gun violence in particular, but I understand that the First Lady had a stressful experience over the weekend, and probably every weekend is pretty stressful in that house. And also, I agree that hateful and violent rhetoric is something we should reject. I do, and I think a great place to start to dial that back would be to have a conversation with your husband.
The hand-holding often looks optional, the smiles feel scheduled, and the overall energy sometimes comes across like two people who just realized at the last minute that they were booked for the same event and decided to go through with it instead of canceling. It creates this ongoing sense of mystery, where the image looks polished, but the connection feels distant, almost like it was handled somewhere else. Kimmel leans directly into that discomfort, not by making wild claims, but by pointing out how even the most ordinary details already feel unusual enough to tell a full story on their own. It is less about dramatic reveals and more about the steady buildup of small, awkward moments that simply refuse to fade into the background.
I get why you think you're Jesus. This guy, every time he walks into a room, people say, "Christ, he's back." You're looking good, though, Mr.
Alright guys, this situation just got crazy, so Jimmy Kimmel is literally roasting Donald Trump on live TV, and not just normal jokes. We are talking a severe level roasting. It all started when Trump called Jimmy unfunny and demanded he should be fired again, and Kimmel's response, he did not say stay quiet. He turned it into content. Like at one point, he jokes about Melania and he says she looks like an widow. That line alone shocked the entire audience, but it does not stop there. Kimmel starts pointing out how awkward Trump and Melania look together in public, like their body language, head movements, everything. And then boom, he hits Trump and swag roast after roast, even joking about breaking a point and passing gas as his legacy. But here is the most interesting part. Kimmel flips the whole situation and says if anyone has a problem with jokes, maybe they should talk to their husband. That line straight personal shot, and just when you think it cannot get crazier, and an old clip refuses where Trump himself says, "I love Jimmy." And so now people are like, wait, what changed? At this point, it is not even just comedy anymore. It is like a full-on public rivalry playing out live, and honestly, it's turning into entertainment gold. What do you think? Is Kimmel going too far, or is this just